You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Buckminster Fuller. Creativity sparks originality, which then manifests itself into what we call evolution. To depreciate imagination is to depreciate life. Ours can be the first generation to end poverty and the last generations to address climate change before it's too late. UN former General Secretary Ban Ki-moon. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my podcast. This is your host Shohag Mostafij. Today I would like to focus on some trends influencing global development in this year and in the upcoming years. Well, Dutch engineers have a stoic expression which translates to living with water. It's the right perspective for professionals starts with keeping a country below sea level from washing away. For global development, global health and humanitarian professionals, a similar sense of context is essential, especially at a time like this. So what is the context shaping us to be like this year or the subsequent years? Reviewing many reports and considering conversations with leaders, practitioners, development leaders actually over the years, there are several trends, actually dimensions identified by DEVEX, and other, including bonds, as well as Relief Wave, including other, organizations, those who continue to do research on development agenda, as well as think tanks and institutions across the world. Actually, we based on our secondary analysis of data, we have been able to kind of, aggregate our findings with you today. So some of the trends include, okay, let's go with this one first. Number one, youth-powered innovation fast tracks. A new wave of youth-powered innovation, organization, and activism will grow. From the school strikes for climate beginning only 2.5 years ago, to a resurgence of protests often led by youth reaching record highs even in 2020. We see today how a new range of youth-powered activism will shape engagement on big issues. The resilience and creativity on this action bears unique attention, as does the innovation it will birth, because the demographic momentum of the largest youth generation ever remains as a shaping force. Then we can consider number two as market-changing aspects, impulse localization. Localization is a big agenda. Localization has been the news story for 2 decades now. It traces back at least to the 2005 Paris Declaration. There is no arguing there is something novel about the latest move toward localization. But the context has changed in important ways that are likely to propel efforts to get more money and decision-making to the local level this time around. And the third aspect is climate redesigns the development discourse. Climate redesigns the development discourse. Development has long suffered from uninspiring and non-intuitive, nomenclature. The broadest term our community tends to use, simply development, is quickly confused outside 1818 HST or such places as belonging to the real estate, technology or human resources fields. Demonstrating how injustice and inequality are linked to climate change may be proving a more powerful narrative than traditional humanitarian appeals. So these are some of the just ideas. And conversations of developing countries and ending poverty can quickly take on a paternalistic and even colonial undertone. The closest we have come to universally relevant rallying cry and narrative is arguably universal health coverage, but even in the midst of a pandemic, support for global health is awfully inadequate. And climate change is beginning to alter all these, and there are early glimmers that it may come to reshape the entire development narrative. Right, the number 4, it's the millionaires and billionaires. They're giving grows and diffuses, right? They're giving and it's also diffusing. For example, billionaire philanthropy has become more controversial than ever, but it's not going away. In fact, every indication is that it will continue to grow and disperse this year and the subsequent years. But it's a very good sign that the millionaires and the billionaires, they are actually trying to make more and more pledges and engaging them with the charity work across the world. And we'll welcome them to be a part of this going forward. The fifth, dimension, or the fifth area that we can focus on is the Cold War in tech comes to global development. Great power rivalries are back in big way, and there are no signs they are cooling off. That means North American and European foreign aid is increasingly couch in terms of countering China and sometimes Russia, as we have seen in the past few years, especially including with the G7's recent Build Back Better World or B34 partnership. Even as development and humanitarian organizations aim to do good, they could well be doing harm if they inadequately promote technologies that don't come up with values-based technology governance such as personal data protection. The context is really important, especially when it comes to international organizations like UN agencies and multilateral development banks. For leaders of these agencies, the political balancing act gets harder each year, and development finance institutions find themselves at the leading edge of this growing division as developing and funding deals increasingly come with a foreign policy edge. That's especially true when it comes to tech-related investments. And number 6 is obviously, it's fair to say that health systems are being back, right? And imagine a disease that kills millions around the world until focused public health investments beat it back in most countries, especially in high-income ones. Yet it remains endemic in many poorer countries around the world. This isn't yet the story of COVID-19. It is what's happened with malaria. Over 500,000 people still die from malaria every year, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa. Now there is a newly approved vaccine. It's not a panacea, it's 30% protective against severe diseases. But it's a new and important tool that stands to save tens of thousands of lives among vulnerable children. And it's perhaps the first in a line of new innovative vaccines and treatments for a long neglected disease. For 2 years, if you look at the pandemic context, the broad narrative around the COVID-19 pandemic in low and middle income countries has been supply of COVID-19 vaccines. That's still a critical issue, but the focus this year will, and then the subsequent years, we suppose, land more squarely on the health systems needed to successfully deliver these vaccines and develop vaccines for these and future pandemics, just as it must for the new malaria vaccine. To change the trajectory of the disease, the new malaria vaccine will need to be seamlessly integrated into childhood immunizations programs targeted in most severely affected areas, tracked to ensure booster doses are given years later and complemented with bed nets, treatments, and mosquito control. This is the kind of effort needed around COVID-19 too. Think primarily health worker training, public health education, logistics, and supply chain. There is a chance for a newer initiative around this that's stronger than COVID-19 vaccine efforts have been so far. We saw similar and important shifts as efforts to fight HIV or AIDS matured. PPR and the Global Fund started as disease vertical approaches but landed in systems work. The fight against COVID-19 will take a similar trajectory, and even with the lost opportunities for the past 2 years, there is a chance now to convert the massive global effort around COVID-19 into a broader health systems investment. This is the best chance to beat back COVID-19 in LMICs, mitigate and prepare for the next pandemic, and address the many other urgent health needs for billions of people, including ending malaria. Right. So the last one, the number 7 that we have identified, we are calling it diversification of actors, stakeholders, actually, partnerships and funding. Right? Diversification of funding. These days, everyone predicts an increasingly diverse multi-actor global system for development, and we predict greater organizational inequality anyway. And larger INGOs, multilaterals, and donors will lumber on as power-holding incumbents dominating resources in this global development world. By private styles contracting mechanisms and cartel-like membership bodies, grassroots action will continue to proliferate in innovative ways. But small actors, face a harsh starvation cycle. In the middle, business as usual, could mean extinction for the mid-sized INGOs. All the while, for-profit actors will quietly eat up more and more of global development budgets. And on the further side, actors like giving pledge signatories and participatory trust-based grant makers offer new visions for philanthropy. New funding mechanisms tend to proliferate, but none seem ready to truly shape the field just yet. But obviously, apart from this kind of analysis, we'd like to propose that if you like to reach out to a new destination, you have to find a new pathway. The old pathway will never take you to a new destination. You have to adopt a new path, a new methodology, and a new strategy, or a set of new action plans are to be in place. For example, the business development model for any charity organizations or including any non-profit, actually, they have to do it in a sustainable way. I mean, so that like they just don't necessarily rely on ad hoc project-based support coming from different donors. Rather, they develop their model in such a way that it continues to expand, and beyond donors' support, it can survive in the long run. So this is the high time to revisit your business model, regardless of your entity, for profit or non-profit. But of course, you'll find a way, and hope you find some of the identified areas that we have focused on today very useful, and we wish you all the best. Thank you very much for staying with us. Please subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we would like to continue to serve you going forward. Thank you very much.